Let's talk about the veins of the neck. In this video, we'll discuss the location and drainage patterns of the major superficial and deep veins of the neck. So let's start with the superficial veins. It's helpful to understand that veins out of all of the vasculature are some of the most inconstant or inconsistent elements. What that means is that sometimes their absence or presence is variable. Their pathways are variable. Their anastomoses, or their connections, are also variable. And so these superficial veins are some of the most hypervariable of what is already the most variable elements of the vasculature. Superficial veins get their name because they run superficial with respect to the deep fascia. And they are extraordinarily inconstant. So the two sets of superficial veins that we'll be looking at today are the external jugular vein and the anterior jugular vein. So let's start with the external jugular vein, or the EJV for short. Of all of the superficial veins, the EJV is the largest and the most constant. It has a very classic anatomical relationship with the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So it is going to run superficial to the SCM, and as it descends the neck, you can see it right on top of that muscle. And it can be a very obvious vein, in particular when we have right-sided heart failure. So as blood begins to back up in the right atrium, the veins that feed into that right atrium tend to distend. And because of its position nearest to the skin, you can see very well a distended EJV. The EJV is formed by the coalescence, or the coming together, of the posterior division of the retromandibular vein. Here's the retromandibular vein coming down, typically through the parotid gland, and it is anterior and posterior divisions. That posterior division comes together with another vein called the posterior auricular, which drains regions posterior to the ear to form the EJV. So in your second week lab session, as you reflect away the platysma, the EJV will be just deep to that. The other major superficial veins that we can see are the anterior jugular veins, or the AJV. These veins are formed by the coalescence, or the coming together, of what we would call submandibular veins. So they come from all over here. And we can see them here coming together, and they'll travel anteriorly down, sometimes feeding into EJ, over or under the SCM, most often feeding into the subclavian vein. You can find these in the same area as the superficial infrahyoid muscles. Moving right along to the deep veins of the neck, the more constant veins, let me transition over to blue. We've briefly discussed the internal jugular veins. I'm just going to fill this in here. We can see this is the right IJ descending the neck. This would be within the carotid sheath. The IJ is draining blood from the head and the deep neck. The IJ originates within the cranial cavity, draining some of the sinuses, the blood sinuses within the cranial cavity, and it goes through the jugular foramen. It's accompanied by cranial nerves 9, 10, and 11, so glossopharyngeal, vagus, and accessory, and it's descending down the neck, and it's going to come together with the subclavian vein, which we can see there. So IJV meets the subclavian vein. they form then a brachiocephalic vein. So brachio, because the subclavian drains the upper limb, means arm, cephalic, head. So brachiocephalic veins drain the head, neck, and upper limbs of blood. In this area where the subclavian vein comes together with IJ to form the brachiocephalic vein is known as the venous angle. So there is the left venous angle, the right venous angle, and the left venous angle. These venous angles are significant because this is where lymph is returned to the cardiovascular system. So here we can see a cartoon representing these major venous pathways. So there are the IJs, there's the right IJ, the left IJ coming together with the right subclavian, and the left subclavian to form the brachiocephalic veins. The right brachiocephalic vein is a little shorter and steeper than the left. The left is longer and more oblique. It's crossing over the midline there. And these subclavian veins come together to form the superior vena cava, which transmits blood into the right atrium of the heart. So this superior vena cava is the very last bit of vasculature of the systemic loop of circulation. So that brings us to our assessment question, and that is, the external jugular vein runs superficial to and obliquely across which muscle? Is it platysma? No, that's going to be superficial to the EJ. Is it sternocleidomastoid? Yep. Sternohyoid? No, that's going to be medial to it. Trapezius? No, that's the posterior neck. So the correct answer is sternocleidomastoid muscle. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to talking to you in the next video.